I think we made great progress today, Jim. The speech was gangbusters, and the fact that you have now offered your services as the campaign chauffeur just makes me recommit myself, rededicate to the cause of Blue Bush. Restoring political democracy is something that has to be done one step at a time, and I know you're here as one of those steps. There's only 76,999,999 more to go, but I feel that a groundswell of democracy can be brought up if we just advance the cause, if we just let the people know the vision of Blue Bush, that we're taking a bold step into the future. If only people would just realize that. I have to tell you, last night, a certain amount of depression crept into my consciousness. The campaign just didn't seem to be going well. People were put off by what I was trying to say. It's as though if Jesus Christ himself, walking long-haired, barefoot, and in a white robe down Constitution Avenue, was seen, he'd be followed closely by a squad car. These candidates come from all over the country. They cross that Potomac River and they are transformed almost instantaneously. From the capital cocoon, they emerge larva-like, and they fly off after they've served their elected terms to their corporate consultancies, their malodorous book deals. They live a life of luxury while the rest of us, Republican, Democrat, regardless of who wins, we have to get up the next morning and go into work, continue our desperate quest for a tiny pebble of that great rock that's been sold to us as the American dream. What I discovered yesterday was that we live in a tired democracy. We have exhausted voters. And not only do we have exhausted voters, but we have the somnambulant progeny they have spawned. I do my best to advance the Blue Bush vision, and what do I get? The response of a tired man-child whose only words of my inspirational speech are we done yet? Oh yes, we're done. We're done as a democracy if no one votes. The once vast reservoir of social capital that we've had in this country has been squandered by those in whose very best interest it was originally set up to serve. Clearly we're in trouble. The figures reflect it. Membership rolls are down in everything from garden clubs, hobby clubs, civic organizations, the Women's League of Voters, the PTA, the PTL, the PTO. Everything is melting away. Do you know that Americans spend less time visiting a friend on a weekly basis now than they did just a few short years ago? I know you do because you've joined our cause. We need more like you, Jim. We need voters like you in the driver's seat of democracy. We need to address the tired shrug of the shoulders that's going up. A massive silence is being made.
Guess we can't get up there.
Our campaign van could soon turn into a tourmobile. The vast populace could join us. Tourmobile, it's a metaphor for the Blue Bush Party. People from all walks of life, from every state in the Union, come to this great city. They are inspired by the landmarks they see. But what good does it do if they just turn around and go home to the places where they came from? It does no good, and we end up with the democracy we deserve. What we need to do is divert that tourmobile. We need to turn every one of those voters into a Blue Bush Democrat, a Blue Bush Republican, a Blue Bush Conservative, a Blue Bush Liberal, a Tory, an anarchist, a Blue Bush Socialist. Above all, we need to light a fire under the vast majority of the great disenfranchised American voters. I know we can do this. We just have to do more. When we get depressed, when we think our cause is not being accepted by the masses, that is the time we must recommit and rededicate ourselves to an even greater level of service to the Blue Bush cause. I've decided to pattern the entire Blue Bush agenda after the great revolutions of the 60s. When I say that, most people are thinking of the 1960s, but of course, they are wrong. I'm referring to the revolution of the 1860s. The sexual revolution of the 1860s. I look to Sigmund Freud. I look to Baudelaire. I look to Aleister Crowley for my inspiration there. When people think of the 60s, they think of the drugs of the 1960s. That is so off base. The 1860s is where the true revolution took place. Arthur Conan Doyle's writings about the great Sherlock Holmes showed clearly that he would sniff a little cocaine in his recreational spare time. Music of the 60s, the last great burst of Baroque and the Victorian sounds. So much different from the explosive jazz music of the 60s, also known as rock and roll. But above all, the 1860s in my mind was represented best by the great Abraham Lincoln, the last truly great president of the American Republic. Yes, and at that time it was a republic, and he was the last president who restored us and brought us together as a democracy, bringing together the diverse movements of the North and the South together once again as a great nation. And it was at that time that the powers started to consolidate the hold that they still have today. And as a result, Lincoln was assassinated. Many people think that John Wilkes Booth was a nut or a crackpot, but I contend he was sent by the powers. And that was the first shot of the new guard of the powers. And it was on that day that the swindle began. It was on that day the democracy of this great country started to crumble underneath us. The foundation under our feet began to be removed, slowly, surely, inexorably, bit by bit. We didn't even know what happened. We woke up one day and our election was being decided by a tiny majority of a 42% turnout. Dast I say it? A disgusting democracy. A disgusting democracy where the great majority are disenfranchised. We are doomed to decay and decadence if the vast majority of the voting populace refuses to even vote. Vote or don't, that's our motto. The results have already been signed, sealed, and delivered long before we cast our votes. And those of us gullible to think that our vote makes a difference are the ones who are being swindled the most. It's no surprise that 58% of the voters didn't even turn out. Why should they? As long as we have our hamburger and our six-pack and our weekend, we'll get up in the morning on Monday, go back and do it all again. Just don't disturb me. And don't ask me to join any civic organizations. Don't ask me to get involved in the Lions Club. Don't ask me to get involved in the PTA. Don't ask me to join your garden club. It's not going to happen. I've hunkered down in my own cocoon of ignorance. Let democracy decay as long as it doesn't bother me.